Mark, they stepped in to purchase this thing 6 years ago. How much? It's gone up by what? 7 times 5 is 35. So there we go. It's 5 times the original estimate.
Yeah. So, and, if you don't like oil pipelines, that'll be one more thing to be upset about. But of course, we have all kinds of projects that are going over costs, whether it's a natural gas pipeline, the Coastal Gas Link, or the Site C hydroelectric project. So there's that. The only thing I would add is that people have opposed the oil pipeline because they've said that's how we get our greenhouse gas emissions down. And going back to our discussion about carbon pricing or different policies and regulations, I try to get people to focus on you need the domestic policies to reduce your emissions and your demand for burning oil. But stopping a pipeline won't stop the growth in demand for oil elsewhere on the planet. And so that's why stopping supply projects is less important to me than shifting our domestic economy in ways that we can then motivate, even through carbon tariffs, other countries in the world. And this is what you see the Europeans doing now and Canada working more on that. And so that's how I put that pipeline into context.
Dr. Lem, some critics have argued that the project is going to have an impact on waterways. Of course, the bitumen is going to be stopping and put into tankers here in the Port of Vancouver. Also worried about marine animals. Also worries about expanding the oil industry at a time when we're trying to reduce emissions. Again, taking Mark's point into account. What's top of mind for you, Melissa, as you think about this?
Well, the first thing I want to say in respectful reply to what Mark said is that I don't agree that reducing demand is the most important part. When you think about supply of fossil fuels, extraction, transport, and the effects that this has on the health of people who live locally, that becomes a huge issue. There was a report released by colleagues of mine in 2016 that actually showed that if there is a rupture of the pipeline, if there's a spill, if the massive tank farm on Burnaby Mountain happens to go on fire, people are at risk from explosion. They're at risk from asthma, cancers, and other diseases because of the toxins from the fossil fuels that are going to be in these pipelines. So I don't think we can only focus on reducing demand. I think we really have to reduce supply too. And I do want to mention that colleagues of mine are also hosting a gathering on Burnaby and Gagliardi Way on this Sunday at 2 p.m.
Could you, and just for the record, who are these colleagues of yours?
Yeah, well, they're not colleagues of mine. So a colleague of mine, Dr. Tim Tuccaro, who's been really active in campaigning against the pipeline, is going to be there. But it's organized by another environmental group, and it's family friendly. It's not. It's going to be a good time.
Okay. Janelle, what's top of mind for you as we talk about this pipeline finally going online and finally transporting bitumen into freighters here in Burrard Inlet?
Yeah, I'm thinking about all the Indigenous nations who staunchly oppose this pipeline, who tried to stop it in numerous ways, both by putting their bodies online, with court challenges, etc., and were ultimately ignored as this project set to build. But I want to speak for nature on this file. I am a proud Stellartonais, and that's my most important title on this panel is that I'm a Decaf woman. We are salmon people. We rely on salmon for a food source, but also for cultural reasons. And believe it or not, everyone in this province should also be considering themselves as salmon people, because salmon is the keystone species. And this pipeline crosses hundreds of salmon-bearing rivers and creeks. And in their construction process, TMX did not prove to me that they are able to operate this project while keeping salmon safe, because they were charged with illegally installing anti-salmon spine mats. There was dead salmon found at construction sites that paused the project at various points. And so I'm really worried about the impacts of a bitumen spill on our waterways, which would poison our keystone species, could be detrimental. The increased traffic to the southern resident orcas. There's only 74 left. We got to think about the health impacts, the impacts on the sovereign nations, but ultimately nature that we all depend on.
There are, though, nations that see this, given, all the risks aside, as a benefit, as an economic driver. We even have, of course, the Niska Nation looking to purchase stake in a natural gas pipeline right now.
Absolutely, but these nations are not giving economic alternatives. So, of course, Indigenous nations that have been excluded for the economy for 150 years and now are being brought to the table for fossil fuel projects are going to be interested.
Yeah.
But I think it's disingenuous to not give other options and to, of course, to only forefront the nations that are saying yes and standing behind them and ignoring the calls of those that want alternatives or are saying no.